everybody who's here in this room and joining us on Facebook Live or later. We are so glad you are joining us for the 10th set of presentations of Scots Science Scholars. We've had a wonderful class this summer. They have just done some amazing things, and you are about to learn about all their experiences, or a lot of their experiences and a lot of what they learned. My name is Angelia Gibson. I'm a professor of chemistry here at Maryville College, one of the co-directors of the program. My partner in crime is Dr. Maria Siopsis. She's professor of mathematics here at Maryville College. We've been doing this, again, this is our 10th year to do this program, but we've been working together for 12 or 13 years, and I will tell you, Dr. Siopsis is just an amazing partner, and there's probably not another person I know who cares more about student success and students finding what will make their lives better than Maria Siopsis. So I'm very honored to be able to have worked with her all of these years. It's been great to resume this program. We did it last year. We did it the year before last in masks and with social distancing and without field trips and in many and very pared down way. And so it was so nice this year to resume the program under sort of normal operating conditions and have field trips and have students interacting and having social events the way we like to. And it was just a really great experience for all of us. I was telling someone just a moment ago, it feels like we are all in summer camp together, and for those of us who never did summer camp as kids, it's a real treat. So I do want to introduce you to our leadership team. We all work really hard to make this successful, but these folks are working especially hard with Dr. Siopsis and I. First of all, Brett Longwith. Brett joined us in October. He is our STEM Success Manager and has just a tremendous set of skills and talents and a real ability to connect with students, and we are so happy to have him on board, and he's worked incredibly hard over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks really, because we start working well before the students show up. Our peer mentors, just an extraordinary team this year. First of all, and I'm just going to go with who I'm looking at, Caitlin Coster. Caitlin is a sophomore, rising sophomore, majoring in biology. Katie DeWitt, a rising sophomore majoring in environmental science. Daryl Rice, a rising junior majoring in engineering, and Colby Huffman, a rising sophomore majoring in biochemistry and mathematics. So these guys, I cannot tell you how hard they are working. When Dr. Siopsis and Brett and I go home at night, these guys are still here working. When we get up in the morning, they are up getting people awake and sending them text messages saying you have to wear closed-toed shoes and long pants and pull your hair back and bring your lab notebook and bring your bug spray and bring shorts because we're going to change clothes in the middle of the day. They are the ones doing that. They are the ones here in the evening working with these students when they're working on hard math problems or hard science problems that maybe sometimes bring a few tears. They're here helping them push through and do the work that they need to do. So just a great team. We're so thankful to have them. Brenda Engel, she is the administrative assistant for mathematics and computer science, and natural sciences. And nothing happens without Brenda. We all only exist because of the work that she does. She just makes everything happen. It's incredible. Our families, your families, Dr. Siopsis and I, our families have learned that birthdays get ignored, school years kind of get ignored. Family gets put on hold for this 2 weeks while we do this. My daughter asked me last night when she discovered Cruise Farm chocolate milk in the refrigerator, oh wait, this is probably for the Scots Science Scholars. Can I drink this, Mom? I said, no, you can have this one. This one is for you. So our families have learned to ask those questions, and it's really great. So our families, faculty and staff here at Maryville College, Dr. Jeff Bay, Dr. Barbara Johnson, Dr. Drew Crane, and Professor Irene Gierno, who all led activities with our students and just did a tremendous job. You'll hear some other shout outs during the presentations today. Admissions, financial aid, Rose Life, student affairs, campus ministry, and communications. We work real closely with all those offices to put together this program. And of course, again, nothing happens here without some other people. Our amazing administrators here at Maryville College. So we have, first of all, the president of the college joined us for lab one day, which was a real treat. And then today we also have the real treat of having Dr. Melanie Tucker, who is the vice president and dean of students, and Dr. Dan Klingensmith, who is vice president and dean of the college. And they are both first of all, they've both given up time in a crazy busy time of the year to visit with us, but they're both going to say a few words, and then we'll get started with the student presentations. So thank you. Dr. Tucker.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Oh, so you passed the first test. Excellent. I'm Melanie Tucker. I'm your Vice President and Dean of Students. I'm also your Chief Diversity Officer, and I'm super pleased to be with you this morning simply to say hello and start to put names and faces together. You've been on campus for a few weeks in our residence halls. Hopefully you have enjoyed that experience. This is one of my favorite student programs, simply because I love our students in general. Part of the reason that I'm here is simply because of students like you all that are smart and thoughtful and forward-thinking and innovative, and so I'm always excited to be out of my office and in front of students doing things that are exciting and academic and thoughtful. So I appreciate the opportunity just to come and say hello. You will get to see me again in a couple of days when you come to our all-student welcome on Friday, which I'm confident you will be at 1 o'clock, right? You might get a little shout out in there. So I just want to say thank you for letting me come and say hello. And unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for your presentations because there are more students moving in today, but I just wanted to say hi and have you get to know who I am just a little bit. So know that anything outside the classroom, you're going to hear from Dr. Klingensmith in a minute. People tell you to go to the deans. In the classroom, that's him. Out of the classroom, that's me. If you don't remember anything else about other administrators on campus, classroom, not classroom. We gotcha, all right? So thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do for the college and for learning and participating. And I'm just really proud that Maryville is a place that you get to call home for the next few years.
Good morning. My name is Dan Klingensmith. I am the Dean of the College, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of the College. So as Dr. Tucker says, I'm sort of the Dean when there's a problem in the classroom, and she's the Dean when there's a problem that's not academic. So if you set your homework on fire, it'll come to me. If you set your roommate on fire, it goes to Dr. Tucker. Don't do that.
Don't do either of those.
Yeah, actually, please don't do either of those. I'm delighted to be here. I had not realized that this is the 10th running of Scots Science Scholars. That is amazing. It is a wonderful program that we're very proud of. It's always pretty much one of the very first cohorts of students to come to campus every year. So when you all get here, it's kind of the signal that we're going to get started, and there's a lot of excitement with that. Also a lot of excitement just because the quality of the students in this program is so high, and intellectual curiosity and interest in all things STEM is so great that it really lifts, kind of as the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. Your passion and commitment helps out everybody, especially that works in this building and really across campus. I am not a scientist or a mathematician. I'm a historian, but I love coming over here for presentations because I learn a little bit about science, stuff I didn't know, and hopefully at the end of your 4 years here, if not already, you'll think that's the way Maryville College rolls. Study things very, very broadly. If nothing else, I would say not only am I a more satisfied person and a more satisfied learner, I'm a better historian and a better dean because I just know other stuff that's not history and not administration. I know a little bit about science because I come over here to presentations. So while you're here, go see presentations, go cheer on your fellow students when they're making presentations over in humanities or social sciences or anywhere else. Learn everything you can. There's a saying, learn everything. You will find later on that nothing is wasted. I'm now 57 years old and I can tell you that that's true. So with that, I will just leave that, and because I want to actually watch your presentations, I'm going to have to cut out of here at around 5 till 10, and I apologize, but I've got another commitment. But thank you all very much for having me here, and welcome.
Who's first? And speaking of a rising tide lifts all boats, right? We have a presentation about locks, right?
Oh, awesome.
So before we begin, we'd like to thank the NSF for providing the grant by which this program is funded. We'd also like to thank the Maryville College Divisions of Natural Sciences and the Divisions of Mathematics and Computer Science. So thank you very much. Today, I'm Matt Hurst, and I'm a mathematics student here at the college.
I'm Jorge Crane, and I'm majoring in biology.
I'm Jorge, I'm majoring in engineering.
Today we're going to be telling you all about boat locks, different types, functions, and the history of locks. So first of all, a basic definition about boat locks. If a boater is on a lower plane of water and needs to move up to a higher plane, they need to use a kind of water elevator, so they have to use a boat lock. So why should you care? Well, of course, if you're ever on a boat, they're going to be beneficial to you. And if you're interested in the field of engineering at all, they're just incredible because the doors have such an advanced mechanism and they're very interesting to look into. This specific lock pictured here is the Fort Adaline lock that we kayaked with Maryville College Mountain Challenge. And it's powered by gravity, which means it's very clean energy. And there are actually 10 locks on the Tennessee River, so they're all over the place. So a more in-depth definition is that it's a watertight cabin that either raises or drains the water, and the ship enters and it adjusts the water level. And here's a little demonstration of a ship starting lower and going higher. So the stages of a canal lock mechanism, it's pretty simple. There are only three. The first step is that a ship enters the lock. The second step is that the gates close and the water level is adjusted to move the ship either up or down. And last, the ship exits the lock. Sometimes the water level has to be adjusted before the ship can go up or down because the water level has already been adjusted for a previous ship. So you can see here, here's another demonstration. This one has a chamber that the water filters into and is filtered from. The gate is leaking, and this is intentional because it demonstrates the concept of sluices. And these are little slits in the door that either drain or pull water to aid in the draining or filling of the cabin.
So now we're going to talk about the different type of canal locks. So first we have the flash lock. The flash lock is one of the earliest canal locks. It was invented because early waterways were natural rivers, so that means it made it harder for boats to go up and downstream. It was used in England until the 1950s, and it has origins in Europe, Britain, and Scandinavia. This image here is an example of what a flash lock looks like. So now we'll be talking about how a flash lock works. So if you look on the right, you have the paddles, which are just boards that are supported against the current. And then you have rivers, which are upright timbers that keep the water above the flash lock to navigable levels. And then you have the sill, which is the base of the flash lock that holds the rivers in place. And then if you want to travel upstream through a flash lock, the boats would have to be winched or towed after the paddles were removed. And the picture on the right is an example of the capstan wheel that was used to winch boats upstream. And then for downstream travel, it's the same exact process, except the boats don't have to be winter towed because obviously you're traveling downstream. And the picture on the left is the example of the paddles that were used in a flash lock. So now we're going to talk about the miter lock. The miter lock consists of 2 gates that swing open on a hinge in unison. It was invented by Leonardo da Vinci in 1497, and the design has become a standard design for a lock, and then that image is an example of what a miter lock looks like. So how a miter lock works, the pressure of the water places a force on the gate, which forces the gates to close upon each other at 45 degrees. And then for the miter lock gates to open, there has to be an equal level of water on each side, and that allows water to flow through and anything that is inside the miter lock to also flow through. So now we're going to talk about the pound lock. The pound lock is a chamber with gates at both ends. It was first used by the Chinese in the 10th century. The term pound refers to the stretch of water between 2 canal locks. It allows boats to move between different levels easily, and then the invention of this type of lock allowed the construction of canals. And this image is an example of a pound lock in China. So how a pound lock works, first the filling valve will open, the water level will rise, the upper gate will then open, the boat can enter into the pound lock, the upper gate will then close, the lower gate opens, the water level decreases, that causes the rack and pinion gear to turn, and the front gate will open, and then the boat can safely leave the pound lock after that. And then a small note, only a relatively small volume of the chamber needs to be filled rather than a whole reach of the waterway. Then we have staircase locks. It's pretty self-explanatory, has a staircase pattern, and you use the staircase lock when there is a steep incline. It's used as an alternative to building several locks very close in proximity, and it also allows barges to alternate between ascending and descending at the same time. And this picture is an example of what a staircase lock looks like. So why would you use each type of lock? So you use a staircase lock, like I said, when there's a steep incline or larger bodies of water. You'd use a miter lock when there's smaller bodies of water, and also it is quicker than a staircase lock for a boat to get through. And then you would use a pound lock on short drops. It has almost no effect on water level, and also it is the safest option.
So I'm going to talk about one of the most famous systems to the locks, and that will be the Panama Canal. But before we talk about how they was built in the lock system, let's review a little bit of the history. So the Panama Canal was built the beginning of 1904 and opened on August 15, 1914. It was built to connect the Atlantic to the Pacific. It was inspired by Egypt's Suez Canal, and the water flows upstream, which will be important later on. And the canal itself is 50 miles long, but the lock system itself is half a mile long. And this is an area of the lock system itself. So 3 locks. Boats will get through. So when building the canal, they faced multiple problems, and the main problem was diseases, mainly yellow fever, malaria, which was transmitted by mosquitoes. At the time, people didn't believe or couldn't really think that mosquitoes could actually kill a person. But in order to move on with the project, they had to accept the idea that mosquitoes can kill a person. So they kill off the mosquitoes and it moved much faster. Another problem they faced was difficult weather, heavy rain, and intense heat. The rain made it super muddy, super hard to work. The heat made people pass out of heat strokes. And this, along as well as cost, made engineers debate that if the Panama Canal was even worth the build. They argued with the U.S. president at the time being Teddy Roosevelt to build another canal on Nicaragua. But due to active volcanoes, they decided to scrap the project and continue with the Panama Canal. And one of the biggest problems they had was excavating and disposing of earth and rock. And at the time, the technology wasn't as advanced as today. So to fix that, they used railways and rail cars to transport rock and earth, as well as excavators, steam-powered excavators, and railways to transport them. But since the excavators at the time were not as strong as today, they usually work in groups of 3. But the main power, was humans, or people. And most of them, as you can see, are grown men, but some of them are teenagers. Like in this corner, there's a teenager right there. So now we get to the Panama Canal locks. So as I mentioned before, it was made to connect the Atlantic to the Pacific. So, but the Pacific is at a higher elevation than the Atlantic. So they need to build a lock system so we can move the water upstream. And so how the locks work first is a boat will enter one of the first of the Gatun locks. The chamber will, the locks will close, the chamber will fill with water. The upper valves will open, the gates will close, the lower valves will close. It will make the water from Gatun Lake to pass through the 20 holes in the chamber floor. Gatun Lake being an artificial lake. And this is the difference between elevation and the canal. The canal is 2 ways instead of 1 way. So Fort Loudon Lock is the dam we went to. It was the last dam built in the Tennessee River. It was, it's an example of the miter lock, as you can see right here. It was constructed in July 8, 1940. It was completed in June 1944. It was named after an old military outpost, which was named in honor of John Errol of Loudon. And it races in lower boats between Fort Loudon Lake and Wat Bar Lake. As you can see, this the second gate of the fort is out in there, lower down. As you can see, the gates don't go all the way down to the floor, just at a certain level. It's just leaving the fort. So you can see how deep it was. So we want to thank Maryville College, the Mountain Challenge crew, the Fort Loudon group for letting us, experience it, as well as the professors, the peer mentors, since this was the first time for everyone, for the college as well, obviously, and we want to thank you all. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Do you guys have any questions? Thank you.
Who's going next? Waiting for Dr.
So our presentation was based off the stats and modeling. My name is Hadyn. I am an engineering major, and I'll be playing golf here at Maryville College.
My name is Zay Richardson. I'm an engineering major, and I will be playing football.
My name is Sebastian. I'm getting an engineering degree here, and also play golf here at Maryville College.
So why we chose stats and modeling? We sat in for Dr. Bay's lesson that he gave us, as well as a bunch of other lessons. And he gave us a lesson on how to do this with basketball players, and we switched it into football players. All of us did something kind of like this in high school, but not on this scale, so we kind of wanted to give ourselves a challenge. And we are all athletes here, so the way that it was taught was very appealing to us. Putting athletics into something like stats and modeling was very enjoyable, and it sounded like a fun idea. Our idea, so we had a few ideas at the beginning, such as putting all the players in the NFL, the top players from each team, and making kind of like a dream team, but we noticed that would take a long time. So we ended up not choosing those ideas, and Brett ended up giving us an idea of comparing the top 10 players at each position and comparing them to the players that made the Pro Bowl to see if realistically the right players made it into the Pro Bowl.
What is the Pro Bowl? Pro Bowl is like an NFL All-Star game where the best players play and compete, and more than like fan favorites. They vote in. quarterback runs through all these big defenders. They are on the offensive side of the ball, scores touchdown, and based on our Z-score, we are comparing them. For the quarterback, we are comparing them for passes completed to the wide receiver. On the running back, it's yards per carry after they get through the defenders, how many yards they get. And on the wide receivers, it's the passes what they call.
So what does go into a Z-score? A Z-score is pretty much taking some kind of data, whether for us it'd be the yards after each carry or anything like that. It can be diversity, population, you can even do sports teams for each state or whatever. But it is a very easy way of being able to see how each thing compares to each other. It is based off of population, obviously the stat, and the standard deviation average for each thing. So as you can see here, this is male height from the average adult. This stuff right here in the middle is between one standard deviation. So everything from the right side of this line is positive, and everything to the left of it is negative. Everything that's light blue is one standard deviation, and the darker blue is 2 standard deviations, and this almost purple navy blue color is 3 standard deviations. So how does that actually, how do we actually get those answers? Is you take the data that you're trying to compare, you subtract that by the amount of people that fit into that category of data, and then you would divide that by that number of, or that average standard deviation that you're going to be getting that Z-score from.
So how did we get our data? So we found a website that would make it very easy for us to kind of find each player. And so for the top 10 players, we so you press a certain position, which is kind of hard to see up here, but it's quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, which we based ours off of. And then so if you press quarterback, it'd give you the top 10 in order right here. And then same thing for the running back and wide receiver. And then for the Pro Bowl, we went to a website, looked up each of the Pro Bowl players, and all you had to do was search up a player right here. It would give you the Z-score right in this category right here.
Quarterback Z-scores, but 3.0 scale, Z-score scale is the highest of all. So as you see, Josh Allen and Tom Brady has the most accurate passes towards wide receivers. As you go to Kirk Cousins, he's good, but he's not as high as Josh Allen and Tom Brady. As you can see more 3.00 Z-score scales. It's 4 of them. So that means it's more easier for to catch it depending on what type of quarterback they have, how accurate their quarterback is. The running backs. Jonathan Taylor has a 2.409 thousand Z-score scale. The reason it's so low is because he's running through bigger defenders and they can get hurt or stuff like that. And quarterbacks, see, you have a lot of 3.00s, there'll be about 2 of them up there. And you go to the running back, they're under 2.5. And go to the wide receivers, they are more higher than the running back because it's more easier for them to catch balls than running.
So this is the Pro Bowl quarterbacks. As you can see, some of them aren't from that top 10 list, but that might be because they might make more flashy plays, but those flashy plays come with more turnovers or things that would negatively affect that Z-score. So Mac Jones and Russell Wilson aren't part of that top 10, but there are some that are from that top 10 quarterbacks. Same thing here with the Pro Bowl wide receivers. Towards down this list, Hunter Renfrow and Mike Evans aren't part of that top 10 Z-score, but they were making flashy plays or they do interact well with the fans in that community. And again, with the running backs, same thing. There's 4 from that top 10, but they do either make flashy plays or they don't get as many yards per carry, but they might score more. It just depends on what stat you're going to be comparing. And this graph shows that even though they don't have as big of Z-scores, they do actually are closer together from top to bottom. Running backs especially, they are much closer together than the top 10 were. And that is because they're more fan favorited and there's not as much deviation from the top to the bottom.
So our next plan was to compare the top 10 quarterbacks to the Pro Bowl quarterbacks. Everything highlighted in this greenish color was a Pro Bowl quarterback as well. But as you can see down here, Matthew Stafford was pretty much better than 3 of the quarterbacks that made the Pro Bowl, and he didn't make the Pro Bowl. And then Josh Allen and Tom Brady also didn't make the Pro Bowl with a 3.000 Z-score. So that could mean that they weren't fan favorites in that situation. And then same for the wide receivers. Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp, they were both in the Super Bowl. That is the reason they did not make the Pro Bowl, as it was a week before the Super Bowl. Same thing, highlighted green. And then as you can see, DJ Moore, 1.938. Still higher than 4 of the wide receivers that made the Pro Bowl. So in here are the running backs. 3 of the top 5 made it into the Pro Bowl. But once again, the 10th best running back was better than 3 of the running backs that made the Pro Bowl. And then here is our scatter plot, kind of comparing the QBs, the top 10 QBs, and the QBs that made the Pro Bowl. As you can see, this range 1.5 to 3 basically, and then you have the Pro Bowl range, which was 0.8 to 2.5. So it's definitely much better in the top 10. And then same, the running backs, they're pretty much equal in this situation. Running backs in the top 10, running backs in the Pro Bowl, they're very similar. And then for the wide receivers, you have wide receivers in the top 10 are better, but the wide receiver pros are also more consistent down at the bottom. And you can't see this on this graph, but there were 4 wide receivers at the very top of the 3.0 Z scale, and there was only 2 that made the Pro Bowl that were at the 3.0. So the differences between the QB and the wide receiver and the running back, like I talked about, you have people like Josh Allen and Tom Brady, who were 3.000 Z scores and didn't make the Pro Bowl, when you have people like Russell Wilson who had a 0.8 Z score that made the Pro Bowl. And then another thing is, in the running back position, there was Derrick Henry, who is known as probably the best running back in the National Football League, who was probably the 25th best running back in the Z-score rankings. And that all has to do with how much he runs the ball, carries the ball, versus how many yards he gets. He was used so much that it's almost impossible to get as many yards to keep up with a good Z-score. And then the wide receivers were the only group that have a Pro Bowler with a 3.0 Z-score, that had 2 wide receivers. And there were no QBs with a 3.0 Z-score that made the Pro Bowl. So this data shows that you do not have to be the best to make the Pro Bowl. You just have to be a fan favorite, or you can make very flashy plays, or you can be like Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, playing for the best team in the NFL, the Bengals, in the Super Bowl.
Acknowledgement letter to Dr. Bay, Dr. Siopsis, Dr. Gibson, and Greg, mentor to Dr. Bay. We'd like to thank him for introducing us to the stats and modeling, so we can compare it to what we love, like football, golf, other stuff like that. We'd like to thank Dr. Siopsis and Dr. Gibson for letting us enter in this program and join it. Thank you. And we'd like to thank Brett and the peer mentors for helping us, being a positive role model in our life and guiding us through college.
Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. This was very, very difficult to get together. It was very last minute, but thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. And we are going to be presenting on birds of prey. My name is Chance Loveday, and I am planning to major in computer science.
I'm Jackie, and I'm a biology major.
And I'm Jessica, I'm going to be a computer science major.
So how do we define a bird of prey? Well, a bird of prey is a bird that feasts on vertebrates proportionally larger to itself, such as smaller birds, rodents, and mammals. And typically, all birds of prey have keen eyesight, strong talons, and hooked beaks for hunting. And a great example of this is a bald eagle. For example, a bald eagle can see an animal moving such as a small rabbit up to 2 miles away. And it uses its strong talons and hooked beaks primarily for hunting fish, rodents, and small mammals like rabbits. So let's briefly classify birds of prey. There are 13 distinct types, but we're only going to talk about 5 today. We have eagles, hawks like the red-tailed hawk over here on the right, falcons, which are smaller than eagles and hawks, but they have proportionally longer wingspans, vultures like the turkey vulture over here in the bottom left, which have a unique sense of smell that they use to seek out carrion and decaying animals. And then finally, owls, like the great horned owl up there. And what's notable about them is their flexible neck, and that allows them to have a 270-degree field of vision. So where did birds originate from? Well, we can pinpoint it back to the Archaeopteryx, which was uncovered in 1861. And this was just 2 years after Charles Darwin wrote his paper on the origin of species. And it shared many characteristics of both a modern-day bird and reptiles. And it was estimated to live about 150 million years ago. As you can see, it has hollow fused bones, 3-fingered hands that serves as a skeletal system for the wings, and a highly reduced tail. All 3 of these help modern-day birds become more suited for flight.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of birds of prey. So we'll go ahead and start with their vision. Birds have highly developed vision, but there are some differences between diurnal and nocturnal birds. A diurnal bird means it hunts during the day, while a nocturnal bird means it hunts during the night. Notice over there we have an owl, and the owl has something called an anisetating membrane, which is a third protective eyelid that it has that comes down. It's mostly clear. Owls, since they are nocturnal, will have a better vision overall than diurnal birds. So their vision is about 2 to 3 times greater than a human's, while a diurnal bird would typically have vision comparable to a human's. Birds have their eyes fixed inside their skulls, so they cannot move them side to side like we can. However, that flexible neck is what allows them to see a field of vision up to 270 degrees.
So each bird has a unique eye color, which states their behavior. So if they have black-colored eyes, that means they're nocturnal and they hunt at night. And if they're orange, that means they're crepuscular, so they hunt at dusk or dawn. And if they're yellow, that means they're diurnal, which means they hunt during the day.
Okay, the facial disc is a trait unique to the owl that relates to vision. So you'll see it has these phyloplumes, which are thick, rigid feathers all around its face. These form a kind of satellite dish that amplify noise as it goes towards the owl, which allows it to pinpoint the exact location of prey even at night. You'll also see over there in the smaller picture what are called ear tufts. They are present on some owls and are often mistaken as ears for hearing, but they are not. They are only used for camouflage and expression like you would see in a dog's ears. Now, a diurnal bird, once again, is not quite as developed in terms of senses as the nocturnal bird. Their hearing is about as good as a human's. They can hear from about 1 to 5 kilohertz. A nocturnal bird has much more developed hearing, and they can hear ranges below and above what humans typically can. For here, you'll see a picture of a bird's ear. Unlike us, where we have actual physical structure to our ear, birds only have small holes on the sides of their heads. So the only birds where you can typically see the ear holes are going to be vultures, since they have no feathers on their heads. Over there is a picture of an owl. You'll see that their ears are slightly offset and the size of the ear holes are actually different. That allows them once again to have that better hearing to pinpoint prey. Right, the smell of most birds is not well developed at all. They typically do not need it with their superior eyesight. But the one exception to this rule is the turkey vulture. He has a very good sense of smell since he typically has to find dead prey, and some other birds will follow the turkey vulture to find food. Right, the beaks of birds of prey are typically sharp and hooked so they can catch prey. Over here you'll notice that the falcon has some unique adaptations in terms of its beak. So they have the tomial tooth, which is a sharp protrusion that extends down from the top of the beak, and that allows them to snap the necks of prey. They also have the bony tubercle in their nostrils. Falcons can dive at up speeds of up to 200 miles per hour, so this extra bone allows them to deflect air so they can still breathe while they are diving. And the design for that bone ended up being used in our modern jet engines. Birds have many internal structures, but today we'll be focusing on the digestive system and the lungs. So then the digestive system, the most important part is that crop at the top. It's the large muscle. Birds do not have teeth because teeth would weigh them down and make it harder to fly. So the crop functions as their teeth. It contracts and expands to crush food so they can digest it. And then they will cough up any undigestible parts as pellets. The lungs over here are completely developed for getting as much oxygen to the blood as possible during flight. So you'll notice their lungs actually only go one way. The oxygen will flow in here to their lungs and then go directly into the bloodstream, or will be stored in these air sacs, which gives them a supply of air and helps them fly. The skeleton of a bird of prey, once again, developed completely to be lightweight, so it's easy for them to fly. You'll notice over there a comparison of a human bone to a bird bone. While human bones have solid marrow with a small opening in the middle for blood, bird bones have little tresses instead of a solid bone so that they're still strong, but they can be mostly full of air. Over here is a complete skeleton of a bird. The important things to note are those large eye sockets, since the eyes on a bird of prey typically take about 2/3 of their skull. And this large keel on the front. This bone connects to the pectoral muscles that control flight. And you'll notice down here, they actually used the bird bone to design some energy-efficient cars, so they're lightweight and strong, so they require less power. Right, now we'll talk a little bit about flight. So starting off are the feathers. Feathers make up a significant portion of the bird, including its weight. So on a typical bald eagle, about 17% of its weight will be feathers, while only 7% is its skeleton. They'll also do something called preening, which is the process they do every day to take care of their feathers. This is when they'll zip up these barbs and barbules. The barbs are these little pieces that stick out here of the feather, and the barbules are small hooks that allow them to zip the feathers together. During preening, they'll also spread an oil secreted near the base of the tail that helps them clean the feathers, keep them healthy, and make them more water resistant. Over here you'll see a red-tailed hawk. He is molting. This is a process that happens once a year in birds of prey to release more or dead feathers. Typically the process is about 4 to 8 weeks, and it occurs right after the mating season.
One particularly interesting aspect of birds of prey is how they're able to fly. So if you notice, the top of a bird's wings are curved, they're not straight. So what happens is they have more exposure to the bottom of their wings, so they'll have more pressure pushing them upward on the underside. And what this does is there is a warm air current that pushes up against the underside of their wing, and that's how they're able to soar. So they're not exerting nearly any energy at all just soaring through the air. But they'll get to a point where they'll have to flap their wings to stay airborne. And what they do in this process is they'll take the front of their wing and they'll turn it downwards and they'll push all the way back and propel themselves forward. And they'll use this in succession in combination with soaring and flapping. So you'll often see a bird flap a few times and then soar for a few seconds.
And if you'll notice the picture in the corner here the same physics that were used for the bird wing are used in our modern airplane wings.
So now we're going to discuss threats that many of birds of prey face. So the first one is habitat loss, especially for the Philippine eagles, which is deforestation, so cutting down trees, and in result, they lose their homes. Now we have raptor diseases. So 3 common ones are the West Nile virus, the avian influenza, and avian pox. So the West Nile virus causes inflammation of the brain and heart, and the avian influenza is caused by type A viruses. And the avian pox is caused by AB pox virus. So as you can see on this picture, the bird is encountering tremors and head tilting. And then for this one, it's edema, so swelling around the eyes. And then for this one, it has warts around the eyes and the beak. So poisoning is very common in vultures, and 14 out of 22 vultures are facing endangerment. So basically, humans poison the rodents and stuff, so then the vultures consume the rodents, and that's how they're poisoning. So now we're going to go into conservation.
So we're first talking about why it matters to conserve these birds. One of the biggest reasons is biodiversity. The ecosystem needs a wide variety of animals in order to sustain itself, and many birds of prey are keystone species, which means that once they disappear, the entire ecosystem is affected. There are many things that humans also gain from biodiversity. A stable environment will naturally clean both the water and the air, which means we save money, we don't have to pay to do it ourselves. It'll generally make public health better, as the less contact we have with these animals, the less chance we have of getting their diseases. One of that we got recently was the coronavirus from the bat. There's also many cultural impacts to saving these animals. For example, the bald eagle has become a symbol of America and of the freedom that we enjoy here, and if that animal were to go extinct, we would no longer get that cultural value from it.
So now let's narrow it down. So why do birds matter to humans? Well, for one, they have many technological inspirations. For instance, the wind turbine was based on the design of an owl's wing. And also, it helps add to general human happiness, such as birdsong. If you were to, for instance, if you're going to go out in the college woods, you're going to hear quite a bit of bird noises. And if you were to walk out there or in nature out in general and not hear that bird song, you would feel like something's missing. And then also something more straightforward, insect and rodent control.
So these are some local birds we have here. So this one is a swallow-tailed kite. The one up in the corner is a northern goshawk. Then we have a long-eared owl and a swing-sense hawk. So they all have unique features such as eye color that detect their hunting behavior. They all have unique feathers, and that's how they adapt to their environment.
And all these local birds we just mentioned are endangered. So these are ones you can go outside but might not see anymore if we don't do something to help them.
So how can we help? For one, we can stop deforestation, so not cutting down trees if they don't need to be cut in the first place. Stop using poisons, which causes many vultures to die. Ensure that we have a proper environment, clean water, limiting poaching, and reduce pollution to make sure that each of these birds of prey have a proper environment. And we need to educate ourselves to make sure that we have a clean environment, and so do the birds of prey. So one day, Dr. Lincoln brought over Jessie, and we got to see Jessie up close. And we actually have our own bird of prey outside of this building. So Maryville College can educate students about what they do to adapt to the environment, and just so we can go outside and look at it.
Finally, we'd like to give a special thanks to Dr. Lincoln for inspiring our interest in this topic, and we'd like to thank everyone who's made this program possible. Dr. Siopsis and Dr. Gibson, thank you for everything you've done for us. The peer mentors, you've done more for us than you can imagine. And we'd like to thank everyone for coming and listening to our presentation today.
Hi, my name is Adaline. I'm majoring in civil engineering.
I'm Ellie James. I'm majoring in environmental engineering. I'm Ashley Goldlink. I'm majoring in biology.
Today, our presentation is over fish conservation. And we would like to start out with a big thank you to Dr. J. Clark and Conservation Fisheries Incorporated for the inspiration for our interest in this topic. So we're going to start out with the CFI's history, mission, and goals. Where it all began. In 1957, there was a reclamation project in Abrams Creek in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The goal of the project was to add a poison to the creek to kill off the large fish that were thought to be a competition. The project not only killed the large fish, but it also killed off many small fish species such as mad toms and darters. This is a picture of Abrams Creek. When a handful of the species collected got to the University of Michigan, William Ralph Taylor discovered that there was a new species of mad toms that was new to science, the smoky mad toms, which is on the left. About 20 years later, Jerry Dinkins discovered a population of smoky mad toms and yellowfin mad toms in Sitco Creek, which is also in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is, this is the yellowfin mad toms. How Pat Rakes and J.R. Shute got involved. Pat and J.R. both were getting their masters in zoology at UTK at this time. They worked under the famed ichthyologist Dr. Dave Eckner at UTK. Dr. Eckner approached them about reintroducing both species of the mad toms back into Abrams Creek. These two were the perfect pair for this job because they both really loved working with fish and both were trained in ichthyology. This is Pat and JR. The operation location. This operation had several different locations, from small offices at the university to back rooms at a fish store. In 1992, they were incorporated as a nonprofit, so now known as Conservation Fisheries Incorporated. Their final move was in 2002 to their current location, where we got to visit this summer in Marble City. Like all the other locations, they are outgrowing it, so they are now working on an expansion project to add to the front of their building and the back of their building to just help have room to grow more fish and food for the fish and just have more room for their equipment. That was a picture of us in front of their building. Their main mission and goal. Their main mission and goal is to save and reintroduce small fish species back into their natural environment. Tagging fish to assess in monitoring individual fish species is another one of their goals, just to keep track of all the fish that they have worked with. Understanding the life history of groups of non-game fish, such as mad toms and darters, is a big part of their goal. And even though they really love what they do and they love helping the fish, their ultimate goal and mission is that one day propagation work will be unnecessary.
Okay, I'm going to talk about fish care and keeping, so just like the steps that CFI takes to take care of their fish. So a lot goes into it. The main things are their water, their habitat, whether or not they have a current running through their tank, keeping them separated from each other, and the food that they give them. So water temperature is super important because of the fish's metabolism. If the water's too warm, it causes their enzymes to act quicker, which makes the water more toxic. And then if it's too cold, it slows the enzymes down and slows down fish body function. To make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be, they do monthly checks to check the conductivity, the pH levels, nitrates, nitrites, ammonia, salinity, and other things. And they also make sure that the spring room, which is that bottom picture over there, is 60 to 70 degrees throughout the whole year to keep it consistent. Habitat is really important for spawning with fish. So basically, it's very instinctual for them to have different ledges and rocks and things to lay their eggs on. So like the greenside darter, which is that top right picture up there, usually it likes rocky areas on the shores in their natural habitat. And so CFI uses like PVC pipe and different ledges like you can see in that bottom picture to try to reciprocate that. Some fish, like the red line darter seen here, enjoy having a current running through their tank. It just helps with stress reduction and therefore increases their quality of life. Separation is really important because in the different tanks with the different species, there's a lot of different bacteria and microorganisms. And so to make sure that there's no splash from one tank to the other and spreading that bacteria, they have all those different black cardboard pieces separating each species. Food is very important because the fish enjoy a variety of food, and they showed us where they keep their black worms, their krill shrimp, and Drosophila, which is like houseflies. And yeah, they just make sure that the fish have all the nutrients they need. So one thing we learned from our fish education is math modeling and being able to predict future population sizes. And so going back to the Abrams Creek example with the Smoky Mad Toms, they released around 500 after the reclamation project. And so we know that they live to be about 2 years and that they lay 35 eggs a year and that they can start laying in their first year of life. We also know from a study done at UT in a lab that 94% hatch and 55% survive till their second year. So this is a Leslie model, and basically that first circle is the egg life stage, which then transfers into the year 1, which can also reproduce. That's that arrow on the top. And then once they become year 2, they can also feed into that egg population. So when we plug in the numbers that UT gives us, there's a 94% rate that makes it from egg to year 1, a 55% survival rate from year 1 to year 2. And then each age provides 35 eggs back into that total population of eggs. So we apply difference equations to this model. So at the top you can see there, you take your first year is the probability a year 1 individual survives to year 2 times the number of eggs. Your year 2 population is the probability a year 1 individual survives to year 2 times your year 1 population. And then your total egg population is how many year 1 fish you have times how many eggs they make, plus your year 2 population times how many eggs they produce. So this is an Excel sheet that I made that just kind of demonstrates how this works. So if we take that 500 that they put back into Abrams Creek, by the next year you should have about 17,500 eggs. And then the following year after that, they'll all be first year fish. And so then you'd have 16,450 with your 94% survival rate. And then the following years to come, you actually do your first phase with eggs and a year 2 population. And then by your 6th year, you have population for each stage of the life cycle. So this is a graph just showing that Excel data. You can see how the egg population is obviously going to be a lot higher than your year 1 and year 2 population because you have both ages filling in for that egg population and they have a higher survival rate. There are limitations to this though, since that information was received from a lab in UT. You don't really have any predators or anything or any sort of environmental changes that can affect the population.
Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about seining, and we'd like to give a special thanks again to Conservation Fisheries and Dr. Jay Clark, and also the Scots Science Summer Program for allowing us to have this opportunity. You can see here most of the pictures from this section are actual pictures that we took from the day that we were able to go seining. So here we have a tadpole in the seining net.
And if you can see, that's Dr. J. Clark behind the little tank there.
So what is seining? Seining is the use of a large net. It has lead sinkers at the bottom, and it features 2 poles on the sides. And you can kind of set it in the water at an angle. And the reason we use this is because it helps us to be able to capture fish without causing them harm. And another thing to note about seining is that it's usually only done in shallow water, so 12 feet of water or less. Video. So you can see here that we're doing some shuttling techniques. The reason that people do this is so they can kind of flip over the rocks and disturb the bottom of the river. And that helps push fish species toward the net, how we're pulling that at the end. So very much a team effort. So again, why do we use seining? Like I mentioned earlier, do no harm. We're not doing harm to the fish because if we're trying to do scientific studies where we're trying to help fish populations survive, we're not going to want to go out there and kill them with a net. Another reason that we use seining is because it can help us capture a large number of fish, so we can see a lot of different variation in our sample size. And various species are also a factor. We can kind of determine the biodiversity in an area based on that. And it's really interesting also because using the seining net, you can target different areas of the waterways. So if we want to see what kind of fish live in swampier, more slow-moving water, we can use our seining net in that area as opposed to more quickly moving water. So you can target areas and see which kind of species live there. This is a graphic from the U.S. Geographical Survey, and it's the Little River information. Our seining day was in the Little River, and you can see in this graphic, it's really interesting. It goes from August 5th, 2022 all the way to August 12th, which is particularly helpful because that's right in the range of the days that we went. And it features the water temperature both in degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that the temperature goes from as low as 19 degrees Celsius all the way up to 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And that kind of helps us determine what kind of species live in which environments. So a couple of the Little River species that we were able to actually capture and observe were the blotched chub. They live in the Cumberland and Tennessee River drainages in rocky freshwater rivers, and they usually live in really small rivers. And that's a picture at the bottom of the blotched chub. Another is the big-eyed chub, which got its name, as you can see from the picture, from that really large eye. That makes it really easy to identify for us. And they're usually found in the Ohio River Basin all the way to the Tennessee River. And they really like sand substrates in small to medium rivers. You can see this picture is a picture from our seining trip, and that fish right there that's a little bit reflective in the middle is an example of the big-eyed chub. Another that's really, really interesting is the northern hogsucker, and you can see from both this picture and this picture over here, it's got its name because it has a really interesting lip and mouth structure that is an adaptation that allows it to eat food from the bottom of river floors. And they're usually found in the Mississippi River basins and south of the Mississippi River. And they're also in runs and pools of clear creeks, and they're just in small rivers. Next is the Tennessee shiner. They're usually found in North America, especially the Tennessee River and rocky, small to medium creeks. And they feature some bright colors that help them with mating adaptations. And I just threw this one in here as a personal favorite, the common tadpole. This one that we found was either probably going to turn into an American bullfrog or a leopard frog. They're found throughout the U.S. in freshwater aquatic ecosystems and usually small areas. Another reason that seining is really cool is because they're really used in scientific studies that help us determine different fish populations. So this one is the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. This study was started in 1980, and their goal was to examine community structure and dynamics for fish and crustaceans, especially in the Rogue River. And they were able to identify 50 different species of fish and 2 different species of crustaceans. So our end results, we were able to experience hand-on field learning. We were able to test out our identification skills with real fish that we caught, and also see which kind of ecological niches were filled based on the adaptations that the fish had and how they work together and compete on the food pyramid. And it also was a great example of biodiversity, just seeing all the different species that live in the same area. Again, we want to say a special thank you to Conservation's Fishery, especially Crystal, who helped us identify the fish, Dr. Jay Clark, Dr. Angela Gibson, Dr. Maria Siopsis, a friend of the college whose property we were on, and the National Science Foundation for supporting the Scots Science program. Thank you.
Before I say just a few words of closing, I want to give you all another big round of applause because that was super. I was thinking this morning about how exactly a week from today, and likely again at 9 in the morning, you will have your first college class. Your first real college class will be in just 1 week. And that's really exciting, right? But already, I have seen you do all kinds of things. I've seen you push yourselves out of your comfort zone. I've seen you, some of you on the tower, just go above and beyond what you were comfortable with. I've seen you in kayaks, some of you not so comfortable about that. What you did today, I know, was beyond your comfort zone for a lot of you. So you've already been pushing your limits, which is really an amazing thing. You have engaged with some really high-level content. What we have presented to you has been at levels, sometimes at sophomore and junior level college stuff. And you've done that, you've engaged with it, and you have made that effort to understand, sometimes with a few tears, but you know, we did it. You've learned some skills, right? You have some wet lab skills now that you didn't have before. You have computing and mathematics skills that you didn't have before. So you've built skills. And you forced yourselves out of bed sometimes when you didn't want to get up in the morning, right? So basically you had the full college experience, right? In this couple weeks, we've given you a full college experience. But this is really just the beginning for you, right? It's going to be 4 years more of these kinds of things for you. And we're going to challenge you. We're going to keep challenging you. And it's going to get hard sometimes. And it's going to feel impossible sometimes, but it isn't, right? Hard is not impossible, I always say. So I want you to take a second and look around this room and notice that these are your people, right? These are the people who are going to be with you on this journey. They're going to help you through the difficult moments, and they're going to celebrate with you when you have a success. We want you to share that with all of us. Dr. Gibson, me, Brett, and all the peer mentors, and all of you, each other, with each other. Make sure you're continuing to share both your triumphs and your difficulties with us. We want to hear all about that. Okay, what I have seen this group bring in this 2 weeks, it's been so fun to be with you, is energy, positivity, curiosity, and a willingness to dive in. And if you bring that next week and for your next 4 years, we can't wait to see what you're going to do. So we're excited to have you here. This is just the beginning for you. You did it! Yay!
Great
Thank
job,
you all
guys.
for-
Seriously, these presentations this year were just amazing. Really, truly amazing. You should all just be so proud of yourselves. We're really proud of you.
Very nice job.
We are going to go out back for a photo. We are.
Yes.
And then you can go on your.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Just one.